Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Derek Brown and by Andrew Erickson. And Erickson, for anybody who is watching on YouTube, you can see he had mouth surgery yesterday, and he is yet still showing up for a podcast where you have to talk a whole lot. He is barreling through the pain. We appreciate him joining. Erickson, thank you for fighting through to be here.
Spitting up blood, but it won't stop me from being on the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast.
Some have called this episode Erickson's Michael Jordan flu game. I have not said that, but I have heard that that those rumbles have been.
I told the guys before the show that it only hurts when I laugh. So, DBro, you're off to a great start.
That's going to be our main attention. I was just worried that it was going to be a HIPAA violation if I told everybody that you had surgery. So I wanted to check beforehand to make sure you're okay with that. And he was. So bear with Erickson today to whatever degree you need to. We are talking some free agency winners and losers today. What a week of free agency frenzy. We are running through our biggest winners and losers. We'll go 3-1 from each of the guys on the winners and then 3-1 from each of the guys on the losers. We're also going to hit some news and notes from yesterday that we didn't get to with a microcast because it happened pretty late yesterday. I do just want to mention to everybody, all of our 2024 early consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And one more thing, if you want to hear our free agency thoughts from a dynasty perspective, Fitz, Bogman, and myself got together yesterday to break down the whole week. So go check that out on the Fantasy Pros Dynasty feed. Again, today will obviously be from a more overall fantasy perspective. Guys, I mentioned the news and notes, and for a while it looked like we were going to have just a couple of minor news and notes. And then last night happened, and we got Keenan Allen traded to the Bears. We got Hollywood Brown signing with the Chiefs. We already had Sam Howell traded earlier in the day. So we have a lot to get through actually in this news and notes section. Let's start with Keenan Allen because that was the one that the big one that happened first. Traded to the Bears for a 4th-round pick. DBro, I'll start with you. What was your immediate takeaway to this trade?
I mean, they're doing things for whoever the rookie quarterback that comes in. We all assume it's going to be Caleb Williams, but they're doing things for him that they never did for Justin Fields at all. They're surrounding him with actual competent playmakers, and you love to see it for Caleb Williams. But for Chicago, some of these moves, if you kind of mush all these together, don't make a whole lot of sense. Like, we'll get into their backfield later in the episode and stuff, but like trading for Keenan Allen, but you signed Gerald Everett, so it's like, are you running a lot of 11? Are you running a lot of 12 personnel? What are we doing here? I think... Yeah. With ranking adjustments, I moved DJ Moore down, moved Keenan Allen up a little bit, considering, the shift and stuff. And I know it's kind of, both of those guys are mid-range wide receiver twos. I think, really, if we're looking at this entire situation, can we honestly say probably the guy that takes the biggest hit here is Cole Kmet? Like, you have all of these brand new toys, rookie quarterback. Can the quarterback in this situation support all these weapons? Like, can both these wide receivers be wide receiver twos? Can Cole Kmet still be a tight end one? You have Everett. Now we have Swift. Like, all these parts or pieces. Who is going to take the hit? And honestly, right now, walking away from it, I think it's Cole Kmet because Keenan Allen's going to get his.
Erickson, what do you think about the Bears situation? I mean, where's DJ Moore and Keenan Allen rank as a wide receiver duo in the NFL now? Like, that seems to me to be a pretty good couple of good players that complement each other's skill sets really well. And I'm not sure where you kind of see yourself ranking these two in Chicago together, Erickson.
Yeah, I got DJ Moore in that like wide receiver 15 range, and then Allen. I mean, I bumped him down pretty significantly. Like, he doesn't have Justin Herbert. Like, I think that's a major downgrade going from a Justin Herbert all-pro quarterback to a rookie quarterback. So again, I think it's great for Caleb Williams or whatever rookie quarterback, finds their way to the Windy City. But, and I think it's the Bears learning from their mistakes that they made with Justin Fields. Like, wow, we totally screwed over Fields because we didn't give him any weapons. Like, we cannot let that happen again. Mm-hmm. We can't make the same mistake twice. So I would say they're going overboard. Like, we don't care. We want as many weapons as humanly possible. Even if it doesn't make a lot of sense, we'll figure out how to put the pieces together, how to put this puzzle together. But I agree with DBro with Cole Kmet. I mean, we saw the disaster that was Noah Fant in like a 3 tight end room with Shane Waldron in Seattle last year. That's the offense. So you can't have any confidence drafting Cole Kmet. And the thing with Keenan Allen that concerns me is he thrived with the Chargers because of volume. Like, that's why he was exceptional as Justin Herbert's go-to target. He would have games with 20 targets. That's not going to happen with DJ Moore, let alone with a rookie quarterback. So I put Keenan Allen down because he's not going to win with efficiency. He's going to be 32 years old. So Yeah, I think it's a downgrade for all the Bears pieces just because I think that expecting a rookie quarterback to just be dropped in and support all of these guys at once is a really tall task.
Can we also talk about one of the quiet winners is Joshua Palmer? Because we talked about the Bears side. We haven't talked about the Bolts side. Josh Palmer, I mean, we saw in the rookie season, QJ was not good. And however we want to talk about that into his sophomore season, expect him to take a leap. Okay, fine, he'll have a full-time role, but can he draw targets? Josh Palmer last year proved that he took a step in his game. I bumped him up to wide receiver 36 because even if it's going to be a run-heavy Chargers, they're going to throw the ball at, like, sometime. They're not just going to run the ball every single freaking play. And Josh Palmer last year, in 7 games without Big Mike in the lineup, he had almost a 19% target share, 2.1 yards per route run, and he averaged 71 receiving yards per game. So the numbers are there to believe that Josh Palmer, and everybody's out there saying, okay, well, now the Chargers definitely draft a wide receiver at 5. I don't think that happens. I think the Chargers are now a definite candidate to trade back with all of this news. Maybe they draft a wide receiver in round 2 or address it later in the draft, but I think Josh Palmer is a sneaky big winner here.
I think, too, with to piggyback on the Josh Palmer point, I was looking back at my NFL drafts or NFL free agency winners from last year, and somebody pointed out after the Brandon Cooks transaction was Nico Collins. It's like, oh, this guy's a big winner. And at that point, he was 2 years in the NFL, had bad quarterback play. We didn't really know a lot about him, but what we saw his second year was when Cooks missed time, he commanded targets, and he improved from his rookie year, even if it wasn't, like, fantastic. That looks a lot like Josh Palmer. You know, wasn't necessarily fantastic, but stepped up when guys went down, which is not what Quentin Johnston did. Quentin Johnston disappeared like the Avatar. He's just like gone when they needed him the most. He was gone. So Josh Palmer, yeah, I still expect the Chargers to add some pass catcher of consequence. Agreed. But at the same time, Josh Palmer is going to be a starter that delivered last year, and Justin Herbert trusts him. Like, we know that they have a connection already since he's been with the Chargers this entire time. So I like Palmer a lot as a winner too.
Yeah, if you're the Chargers, you have to operate under the assumption you're getting nothing from Quentin Johnston. And then if you do get something, great. You now are even better than you expected. But I think they have to build this team assuming he's not going to give them anything because he was that bad last year. But yeah, right now, I mean, I think that's a great call on Josh Palmer. Let's get to the other kind of big one from late last night. That's Hollywood Brown going to the Chiefs, which is a pairing that I think a lot of people pointed out made a lot of sense, given that the Chiefs could use, we've seen what they've done with a guy who's very fast before in that offense. Obviously, Hollywood Brown hasn't sort of lived up to that first round, NFL draft pick billing that he was in 2019. He's played in some difficult situations for wide receivers, even though he's played with good quarterbacks. Kyler's been hurt. He was with Lamar back when they were running all the time. This is now an Andy Reid offense with Patrick Mahomes when they don't have a ton of other obvious guys to take targets away from him. I don't know if people were reacting optimistically enough last night, and they were quite optimistic seeing this pairing. I think this could really take off for Hollywood Brown. What do you think, Erickson?
I think that it's good more or less in real life. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Marquise Brown, just like comparing him to guys that they were running routes last year for the Chiefs. Like, I mean, how much better is Marquise Brown than MVS? Like, it's like night and day. So I think it's a big upgrade for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes overall. I think for Marquise Brown, my issue is, okay, well, what's his price going to be now? Like, are people going to draft him as like a top 24 guy, like locked and loaded? Like, because that's been his ceiling at the NFL level. Like, his best year has been wide receiver 25. So again, you can talk about, oh, well, he's been in these offenses, yada, yada, yada. But who, not named Tyreek Hill or most recently with Rashee Rice, who has Mahomes had as a receiver that he fueled to like a career year? Like, it really hasn't been, unless it's been a special player right from the get-go. So I would just be wary of steaming up Marquise Brown too significantly when we've seen him be at the NFL level, nothing more that at his peak, a wide receiver too. Like, that's really where he's been maxed out. So could he stumble into a boatload of touchdowns? Okay, then that's how he gets to the next level. But for me, betting on touchdowns and locking in that as he's going to be the touchdown guy when, if anything, this just makes me like Rashee Rice more. Like, to be totally honest, like that's kind of the main thing here for me. Was this just means more Rashee Rice? If anything, maybe this makes it less likely the Chiefs draft a receiver in round 1. They're like, oh, we'll wait a little bit longer. We have Marquise Brown. We feel good about him as a veteran. And it's just the Rashee Rice show. So that's kind of my main takeaway from the Marquise Brown signing. Wasn't necessarily on him, but hey, Rashee Rice, he's dialed up for year 2.
That's the freaking take right there. That's exactly where my head is, Erickson. Quick question, man, before I kind of lay into this. Marquise Brown, where'd you bump him up to in ranks? Because I bumped him up to wide receiver 33. I think he's kind of in that mid to low end wide receiver 3 range just because of the role with KC.
Yeah, so I have Marquise Brown at wide receiver 39, but he's also like kind of clustered together with some guys I'm projecting, some rookie receivers, like depending on where Worthy goes, Brian Thomas. So like I kind of see him in that similar range. But again, I really think that when you go from like wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 40, it's kind of this like cluster of guys where it's like, I'm just kind of trying to find the best value.
Man, I'm honestly that you're exactly where you're at is where I'm at with this. I just hope that this makes Rashee Rice a value. Like, I feel like we're getting, and I said this last year, I was like, okay, he's going to finish the season kind of like rookie season Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he basically did that. And now I feel like we're going to kind of get the same things of Amon-Ra St. Brown, like people doubting what he did in his second year. Like, is he really that good? Is he really going to, like, vault into this next tier in the next season? I've got Rashee Rice as my wide receiver 12. I think that his target earning ability is absolutely real. The role that he played, nothing's going to change about that. And the other thing that we're not talking about, or at least I haven't heard mentioned enough with Marquise Brown, is that we need to be baking in the injury risk. And I'm not the big injury history kind of person, but we have a long enough history of Marquise Brown dealing with foot injuries. He came into the NFL dealing with a Liz Frank. He had the surgery before he got drafted. And then you look at the rest of his tenure. So he had a foot sprain in 2022. He had a foot fracture in 2022. Last year, supposedly sore heel. We don't know what the actuality of that injury was. So like, it's been year after year after year of foot problems. So right now, and KC kind of covered themselves with that contract, and a lot of it is incentive-based, that you have to be healthy and you need to perform to get paid. I'm just going to dive into more Rashee Rice, and if I get Marquise Brown in a draft, like he falls and stuff, which he's probably going to catch the steam like Erickson's talking about, and a lot of people are going to, jump the shark and say, oh, he's a wide receiver 2 and things like that, and not really bake in the injury risk, much less what his role is probably in this offense. And that's probably going to be the field stretcher, because I think Rashee Rice is going to fight Travis Kelce for all the underneath stuff. Now, can Marquise, win at all 3 levels? Sure, you can make that argument, but still, I think Rashee Rice is the clear winner, because if you're telling me Rashee Rice versus maybe a Mike Evans or somebody else, or T. Higgins on the other side versus Marquise Hollywood Brown, yeah, I feel a whole lot better with Rashee Rice trying to fight for targets with Marquise on the other side, as opposed to one of those other ones.
Marquise Brown got he got the DJ Chark contract that Chark's got in the last 2 years as like a 1-year prove-it deal, be our field stretcher, and similar to Chark, dude can't stay healthy. Like, he's been a vertical guy. He's had like one marquee year that's kind of like, hey, remember this one season where I was really productive? Like, give me money. And now people have soured. Now Chark's still free agents. It's like teams are starting to figure out, well, yeah, maybe we can't actually rely on this guy being a legitimate starter for us. So yeah, I would be just a little bit wary on his Marquise Brown's price.
The other thing I wanted to quickly say is I'm really excited for Mahomes, because I think that there's still a pretty good chance that they are going to draft a receiver at the end of the first. And given this class, they're going to get somebody who's really good if they do that. And now all of a sudden you're looking at Travis Kelce getting older, but still Travis Kelce, and Rashee Rice, and Hollywood Brown, and insert first-round wide receiver here in a loaded class. All of a sudden, Mahomes had his worst fantasy season last year, I think, and it will, it's a big improvement. And I think that he has sort of settled into, he's the best NFL quarterback, but you'd rather have Josh Allen for fantasy, for a litany of reasons. I think if he starts to really round out this receiver class with one more guy, drafted, I'm starting to feel really good about Mahomes again from a fantasy perspective.
Worm, all I heard you say was, okay, let's draft Xavier Worthy and let's sign DJ Chark, and we're running 4 verts every week.
Please.
That's all we do. That's all we need, baby.
I would have so much fun with that, playing them in Madden. And that's all I would do. It's spam that play every time. The other news and notes just worth hitting on, not quite as big. Curtis Samuel to the Bills. DBro, quickly, I know you've been a Curtis Samuel guy in the past, and now there's a clear path to targets from an elite quarterback here.
There is, man, and this is just adding to the cupboard of how Josh Allen beats cover 2 and how they beat zone coverage and beat a lot of these too high safety looks. That's all this comes down to. And I think the biggest fallout of this is, yeah, we can talk about it's good for Curtis Samuel. Of course it is. But Khalil Shakir, either one of two things happened to Shakir with this. Either he's bumped to the boundary or he's bumped to the bench. Because if he doesn't play outside this year, what was it going to be, Mac Hollins? Because Curtis Samuel's going to play the slot. That's the role he's played the entirety of the NFL. I don't see that role changing going to Buffalo. The connections are there. I know Erickson's probably going to talk about, all the connections and the dots and the math and stuff with Bean and all these kind of parts. And those are all real, man. So I think Curtis Samuel is going to be the starting slot wide receiver. Shakir's role is really up in the air, but Samuel's going to have his weeks, man. Probably a wide receiver 4, but we're going to see spike weeks just like we did with Gabe and other parts of this offense.
Erickson, any quick thoughts on Samuel and Buffalo?
I mean, his best season of his career came with Joe Brady. So that's what you're kind of hoping. Joe Brady just spins it out with Curtis Samuel one more time. Again, look, Samuel's going to string together games where he's going to be productive like he does every year, but it's not like, oh my God, this guy's going to be fantasy wide receiver 1. Like Curtis Samuel, what year is this for him? Year 6, year 7? It's not like Curtis Samuel breakout. It's, here's another depth piece that we can probably stream and pick up and start during bye weeks.
Take shots and best ball, people.
Yeah.
This will be his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This will be his 8th season.
8th. Huh.
His rookie year was 2017.
He's still young at heart.
Yeah. Sam Howell traded to the Seahawks. I think a lot of people in Washington were expecting a trade of Howell. I was interested to see Seattle as the destination. Kind of an intriguing fit. DBro, quickly, any thoughts on Howell?
I don't think he's a definite to beat out Chef Gino for that starting job. If you look at these two guys under multiple metrics, he wasn't even as good as Gino. And people talk about how Gino struggled, but if you look at it across the board, yards per attempt, Gino was 14th, Howell was 30th. CPOE, Gino was 17th, Howell was 20th. Hero throw rate from our dudes over at Fantasy Points Data, Gino was 6th, Howell was 19th. Howell got a crap ton of volume last year, and that was great for fantasy. We all loved it, but I don't see him as a lock to beat out Geno Smith for this quarterback job. I mean, look, to me, this is the last gasp of people being able to trade him away in Superflex Dynasty, and that's all.
Any thoughts on Howell?
I mean, I didn't think that Geno Smith was in jeopardy of his job. I was kind of confused. I was like, wait, I mean, I guess this
said it's gonna be a competition, or at least that's what X has told me.
They always say that. I mean, I don't think it's ever a bad idea for a franchise to invest in a backup quarterback. I mean, they lost Drew Lock, so it's like, all right, let's bring in someone that got some experience. So this is
Drew Lock 2.0. Is that who that is?
I guess for me, I guess it is new management. It's not the Pete Carroll show anymore. So I guess from that perspective, it's like, okay, maybe Howell has a little bit more of a but I feel like Gino would have to literally vomit all over his apron for Sam Howell to step in and be the QB1. So if anything, it helps if he doesn't play well, that when Sam Howell steps in, you're not totally downgrading all the Seattle weapons, because there's a lot of fantasy pieces there. So at least from that standpoint, we feel good about drafting Seattle players in case something goes wrong with Geno or he gets hurt.
The last bit of news here, Desmond Ridder traded from the Falcons to the Cardinals for Rondale Moore. These aren't players that we're interested in, so I just want to mention it because it was, somewhat interesting. I said this on the Dynasty show yesterday because this broke while we were recording. This feels like a dynasty trade between two managers who just are like, yeah, this guy didn't work out for me. This guy didn't work out for you. I kind of need a quarterback. I kind of need a receiver. Let's just swap them. Who the heck cares? It felt very much like a dynasty deal. So we're not going to
It's a trade you make just to feel something, Worm.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Exactly. Let's get into our winners here. We went a little long in the news and notes, but there was some interesting stuff going on, so I think that's okay. Erickson, let's start with your number 3 free agency winner.
I'm going to go with Chase Brown for the Cincinnati Bengals. We weren't really sure how the Bengals backfield was going to shake out. We knew that the team was eventually going to move on from Joe Mixon, and somehow, some way, he didn't get cut. He got traded for a 7th round pick. So Joe Mixon, for all these years that he was going to get cut, he had never actually got cut from the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's between Zach Moss and Chase Brown for that Bengals RB1 role. And when the news first hit, I was like, okay, it's probably going to be Zach Moss. That is probably the guy you want. But then I thought about it more, and I was like, man, Zach Moss is this is the classic, do you want to draft the guy with juice, or do you want to draft a plotter? And I don't want to draft a plotter. I don't want to draft Zach Moss, even if he is quote unquote the starting running back for the Bengals, or at least that's how they view him. I wouldn't say his contract is indicative that he's going to make or be the guy that they don't go away from if he's not effective. $4 million per season, $8 million over the total year of the 2-year deal. And I mean, the thing I always look for, and this is something that we were right about last year with Alexander Madison, right? So Alexander Madison only produced when somebody got hurt in front of him, right? Chase Brown carved out a role alongside a healthy Joe Mixon. They were taking Joe Mixon off the field. Well, you can say whatever you feel about Joe Mixon, but still, he was the starter, and he was healthy. They took him off the field to put Chase Brown on the field to be an explosive part of that the running game. So for me, I like Chase Brown. I think that them adding Zach Moss prevents them from drafting a running back, from investing more into the running back position. I think that he, as someone that has a lot of juice, works in the passing game. I think he have some big value in this Bengals backfield. So if it's going to be a debate between the two running backs all offseason long, would be on the Chase Brown side.
DBro, what do you think about that? I think a bit more optimistic about Moss and Cincy than Erickson is. Where do you come down on this current iteration of the backfield? Because I do think they will probably add maybe like a day 3 running back again. I don't think they're going to go in with Travion Williams as their RB3 next year.
Well, so I think that the Zach Moss, because we've seen this year after year. This happens every freaking year. It's where teams go in and they try to insulate themselves before the NFL draft, and they sign somebody to say, okay, you keep the seat warm. We're probably going to draft a running back, but the contract level that they give these guys, like the Steven Davises of the world and such, like they give these like backup level, like low end starter type of money. And it's to protect the team from saying, okay, we walk into the draft, we have a few running backs we like. If we don't get any of them, do we have somebody on the roster to carry the mail? Sure. But if we're probably going to end up drafting a guy. So right now, you can consider me out on the Bengals backfield. Like, I think that they draft somebody in round 3 or round 4 of the NFL draft. So, you know, if you're doing best ball drafts right now, you want to take shots on Zach Moss, Chase Brown, get your exposure there, then that's fine, and I understand it, but it's not a situation that I really want to go to. But guys, we got
I was just going to say, DBro, you got some breaking news here.
Dude, like I'm pulling up X so I can like pull, just make sure like nothing else popping off. Freaking Aaron Donald just retired, man. Like
man,
my jaw is on the floor right now. Like one of the best to ever do it just hung up as like I didn't see that coming, man. Like the type of year that the Rams had last year going to the playoffs, I thought Aaron Donald was coming back this year, but whoo.
Kyler Murray replied to Donald's tweet just saying, thank God.
Yeah, it said the Rams tweeted out and said they just put a picture of Aaron Donald, said quarterbacks rejoice.
Yes.
Like, I mean, kudos, man. First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it. I mean, look, just heap the praise on Aaron Donald. He is literally one of the best guys to ever put on cleats in the NFL. So, man, enjoy retirement, dude.
Yeah, that's
crazy,
it's stunning. It's so rare to have a player be the undisputed consensus best guy at his position for that many years, especially in a sport like the NFL. I mean, it's a special thing to see that, honestly, and I feel lucky to have gotten to see him play his whole career. But yeah, he's been amazing for so long. It's weird to think of the Rams without him. Erickson, what's your reaction here?
I'm lost for words, to be honest.
It's wild.
I mean, the ledger speaks for itself. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time All-Pro, Pro Bowler in every single season, Defensive Rookie of the Year, has a ring also. Like, the one thing I'll say, just to kind of tie a bow on this, is I do think there is something inherently special about how we view players that retire still at the peak of their powers. You know, when guys don't, I'm not saying get pushed out of the league, but you see some of those skills start to deteriorate. Aaron Donald's still at the peak of his powers. Like, he could go out and play 2, 3, 4 more seasons. I mean, however long. The guy is still just a mauler. So to step away from the game right now when he still is in his prime, I think, is really something, man. And people need to really take a second and ingest how special of a career he had.
Matt Harmon shared a screenshot of what's trending on X for him right now. It's Aaron Donald, then first ballot, then best DT. So just summing up Aaron Donald right there.
Very true.
All right, let's get back to the free agency winners here. DBro, give me your number 3 free agency winner.
Man, I'm going to go. I kind of bounce between two different guys for number 3 here, but I'll bring up the low-hanging fruit here. Let's just go with Saquon Barkley. And I'll put him at number 3 over under the two guys or the two other situations we're going to talk about here. But with Barkley, you have the obvious offensive line upgrade going from the Giants to running behind the Eagles offensive line, which were second in adjusted yards before contact per attempt last year. Barkley, I don't think he's still firmly in his prime, but the metrics are still good enough to where I think he's going to still be the RB1 that we've all loved and come to know. And the thing that I know people are so worried about, but I'm not concerned about, is the first thing that people are going to bring up when they talk about Saquon Barkley is, oh, but what is his touchdown equity going to look like with Jalen Hurts there? Is it a concern? Sure. Like, any guy playing on a team with a running quarterback is a concern. But losing Jason Kelce to retirement this offseason, as well as, do we really think just regression, just playing the idea of regression, that Jalen Hurts is going to run in that many stinking touchdowns this year? I don't see it happening, man. So I'm firmly with Barkley. I think he's going to be a fantastic player for fantasy for 2024. I'm not worried about his touchdown equity because who are we talking about? It's Saquon Barkley versus, okay, your two goal line running backs for the last 2 years have been DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders. Do we really think either one of those players are even in Saquon Barkley's area code for talent? I don't think so. So I think he's going to garner more red zone usage than we saw either one of those guys get. So I'm not worried about it at all. I think Barkley's going to end up with 8 to 12 touchdowns this year. He's going to get some checkdowns in the passing game. And this is all comes down to Kellen Moore said, look, go out and get me a bell cow so I could set up play action and let's ride.
Erickson, I believe in our preview episode, you predicted Saquon to the Eagles. Do I remember that correctly?
No,
you put
I never really.
I think it was Chargers, wasn't it?
I never really had a spot for Saquon, to be totally honest. Okay. I never felt confident.
I thought you had the whole NFC East like moving all within the division. Which I think
I had Pollard to the Eagles. So
Pollard to the Eagles might have been it. Okay, all right. Well, what's your reaction to seeing Saquon there? Because I mean, I think DBro referenced what I was gonna hit on, which is A, he's behind a better offensive line, right? He should be a more efficient runner. But B, there has been the threat of the tush push. Obviously, with Kelce gone, who knows? What's your kind of overall takeaway from this, Erickson?
I mean, I think it's a overall positive. I mean, it's just the better supporting cast. Like, Saquon Barkley's going to run behind offensive line, like, holes that hasn't even dreamed about. like the guy doesn't have to score a touchdown every single time he touches the ball. Like, he's not going to have to take the ball on 30 times a game to, like, oh, maybe we'll score. And I get, the concerns with the touchdowns, but touchdowns are one of the hardest things to project year to year. So for the market to confidently say, oh, well, he's not going to score any touchdowns, it's like, well, what if the Eagles do something different? Like what if they just let's put Saquon under center? What if Saquon becomes like the tush push guy? Like what? And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't draft this guy, and then he scores 20 touchdowns. Like that's something to keep in mind. And I think too, to really notice is specific to DeAndre Swift, and I'll talk about this a little when I talk about DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift has been now on 2 different teams where one of his teammates scored 16 or more touchdowns. So maybe it's not just we want to have Hurts be the leader of this tush push. It's more of a, hey, DeAndre Swift's not a good goal line running back. Maybe that's why they didn't use him. Maybe they paid Saquon so they could use him in that role. So I think that you can argue either way with, the touchdown upside being there or not being there in 2024.
The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. I'm looking here at the odds to make the Final Four. Right now, UConn is even odds to make the Final Four, which is absurd. They are so, so good. Houston plus 120, Purdue plus 180, Tennessee plus 270, Arizona plus 290. Those are your top 5 teams favored to make the Final Four right now. A lot of good teams. March is going to be really, really fun. Selection Sunday, just a couple of days away. However you plan to bet March Madness this year, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code FantasyPros. The crown is yours. Erickson, give me your number 2 free agency winner.
I'm going to go with Christian Kirk. because he has a new teammate, Gabe Davis, who can't get targets and is replacing Calvin Ridley, who actually got targets in the Jaguars offense. So that's a big win for him. I think it makes him the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in the Jaguars passing game. And the thing I want to note about his upside now, look, last year Calvin Ridley tied CeeDee Lamb for the most end zone targets in the NFL. When Christian Kirk was at his best 2 years ago, in his first year with Jacksonville, he was 5th in the NFL in red zone targets. So not only will Kirk be the number 1 receiver in terms of total raw volume, I think he's going to have way more upside when it comes to touchdowns because of the absence of Calvin Ridley. The same thing goes for Evan Ingram, honestly. Like Ingram had like no red zone role. It was like a joke where he never got any red zone targets last year. So I think both of those guys are going to see more red zone targets, and it's going to help them a ton for fantasy scoring. So Christian Kirk, again, I think he's going to be another screaming value for another year in a row as the Jacksonville Jaguars' number 1 wide receiver.
DBro, what are you doing with Kirk?
I like Kirk a lot, man. And same reasons. I mean, Erickson's talking about here. I think even if you go back to last year, like when he was fully integrated into this offense, so like weeks 2 through 12, because he wasn't even a full-time player. You look at what he did last year during those weeks, and he was the wide receiver 19. He was on pace to sit here and have over 1,200 receiving yards. So I'm massively in on Kirk. I think he's a screaming value. Right now, I've got him bumped up to... I've got him at wide receiver 30, but I think he's in a long tier of wide receiver 2, 3s.
All right, DBro, hit me with your next free agency winner.
Well, I had to bury the lead here, Worm. I got to bring up the new Ravens mountain man. I mean, come on. We got to talk about Derrick Henry here, baby. And I don't care about the age. I'm gonna lead it off that way. I do not care about his age. It does not matter to me. You look at what he's done over the last few years, and last year particularly, Henry has not fallen off at all. Among 68 qualifying running backs last year, he was 9th in explosive run rate. He was 11th in yards after contact per attempt. We know the gains that he's made in the receiving game, and he doesn't even need the targets this year in Baltimore. But he has to be on the winner list here because you talk about the upgrade from the offensive line. So last year, Tennessee was 31st in adjusted yards before contact per attempt. Baltimore, 1st. So that is palpable, man. Much less he's going from a putrid offense to one that was 2nd in red zone scoring attempts per game. This backfield combined, guys, the running backs on the Ravens combined to score 20 touchdowns. Derrick Henry is spiking it this year 12 to 15 times. And that might sound ludicrous to some. It's not. He's going to score a ton of touchdowns. He's going to be incredibly efficient. He's going to be a locked-in RB1. I can't wait to draft him. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I have a feeling, even Ravens fandom aside, I will be drafting Derrick Henry everywhere because to your point, like, we just saw with Gus Edwards, and no shots on Gus Edwards. He's one of the best undrafted free agents the Ravens have ever signed. But he is Gus Edwards. We are talking about Derrick Henry, even at age 30. There's no chance, if Henry stays healthy, that he's not scoring 15 touchdowns. It's just like they want to run with a power running back when they get up close. They don't want Lamar running as much. Lamar doesn't call his own number at the goal line. It's always the running back. Also, Henry is still good and can break away a long one, especially when defenders need to stop to freeze to see, is Lamar going to hand it off or not? You give Derrick Henry a head of steam. Like, I am totally with you. Like, the only concern I have, and I will throw a little bit of cold water on it, is the Ravens are entirely revamping their offensive line. So I don't know I know they were really good last year, and obviously they're not going to be as bad as Tennessee was.
They won't be bottom 5. We could say that, though, right?
Yeah, they will certainly be better than that. Tyler Linderbaum is great. Ronnie Stanley reworked his contract. They did trade away Morgan Moses. They don't really have a starting guard right now. It's kind of a lot of backups that you need to expect to step into that role. I expect them to address this position in the draft heavily. It's a very good class for that. So that is the one thing I will say is the offensive line. I don't know if it'll be as good as it was last year as they sort of transition that, but man, just Lamar, Henry, when Keaton Mitchell's healthy, imagine those three in the backfield together on certain plays. Like, I am giddy about that.
I was going to say, Worm, this is a perfect year if you have worries about an offensive line to just go ham. Yeah. Like, they could take offensive linemen in their first 2 picks, and there are a ton of good players in that spot. And they also have the extra equity. Like, they got 2 7s and they got 2 4th-round picks. So if they wanted to even upgrade the 2nd-round pick to, like, higher in the second to sit here and, you know, grab 2 offensive linemen with those first 2 picks, they could easily do that.
I want 3 of their first 4 picks to be 2 offensive linemen and a receiver, and this is a class where you can get great guys if you do that.
Yep, you can do that.
Yeah, Erickson. I mean, Derrick Henry. Obviously, he is 30 years old, right? He was not the Derrick Henry of old last year, but he was still super, you know, good, and at least in terms of the volume. So, what do you make of him in Baltimore?
I mean, I'm excited for it. I mean, if you've been checking out the FantasyPros TikTok account, it's all me. And there's a bunch of stuff about Derrick Henry on there, so I'm obviously excited.
You went on a very long walk to talk about Henry. I think that was, what, a 3 or 4 mile walk?
It was very, very long, very long. But the thing I would say with Henry, I guess, just playing devil's advocate, would be how much of a commitment will they have to actually giving him rushing attempts? You know, Derrick Henry's always been a guy that he needs to touch the ball 15, 16, like almost 20 times for him to really, like, if you give him 10 carries, it's like, well, that's not going to do enough. So I understand the appeals with the touchdowns, of course, but will they commit to be like, we need to feed this guy 15 plus carries every single week? They didn't do that with Gus Edwards. And they've always kind of been like the thunder and lightning type of backfield, even last year when Gus Edwards was playing well, Keaton Mitchell was playing well. Like, they didn't give these guys a ton of volume. So that's my one concern, I guess. But again, if he's scoring touchdowns every single week, it's not really going to matter that much.
Well, and then I'll also say, I mean, it's Gus Edwards versus Derrick Henry too. So I mean, you know, we have to have that conversation too. I mean, like, it's Gus freaking Edwards.
And by the way, the
Henry.
Ravens, I would be shocked if they don't add another running back. I'm expecting them to take a day 3 guy in the draft because.
You think they bring back Dobbins?
I would be happy if they did, just as a let's see if you can finally be healthy, because I do think Dobbins is really good when healthy. Obviously, you know, coming off of yet another major injury, who knows what he'll look like. I don't expect him to be back. But, you know, Keaton Mitchell coming off of a major injury himself. Justice Hill is fine, but they need another guy in this backfield. I expect it to be a rookie.
Isaac Guerrero, you are a Baltimore Raven.
Yeah, and I bring that up to say, whoever it is, I'm sure I'll be happy about, and I'm sure I'll find a way to be really excited as a Ravens fan. But don't be scared off by that if they draft a running back. Even if they draft a running back in like round 3 or 4, Derrick Henry will be like the guy in this backfield for this year, like guaranteed. Erickson, give me your number 1 free agency winner.
I'm going to go with Joe Mixon for the Houston Texans. I just love the landing spot for Mixon in Houston. Look, he can be a 3-down bell cow. And the fact that they traded for him, again, they only gave up a 7th-round pick, but then they immediately gave him an extension. Like, that suggests, at least to me, that, hey, like, they think this guy can really take their offense to the next level. They had Singletary and Dameon Pierce in that role kind of last year. But, look, no offensive line was hurt more last year than the Houston Texans. So Joe Mixon, yes, I get that he's not always been the most efficient running back when it comes to yards after contact per attempt and all of these advanced rushing metrics. But what does the guy do? He scores touchdowns, catches passes, and scores fantasy points. Like, he was RB5 overall last year. He was top 12 in terms of points per game. So I see no reason why I should poo-poo Joe Mixon in any way, shape, or form when he's on an up-and-sending offense that's going to be healthier with the offensive line in 2024. And I'm not afraid of Dameon Pierce whatsoever. Dameon Pierce got beat out by Devin Singletary, who's been a guy that we're always trying to replace. And now they upgraded and committed to Joe Mixon, who people just don't seemingly want to draft because, oh, he's older, he's not the most efficient, flashy running back, but he scores fantasy points. He's only 28 years old, so I love the spot for Joe Mixon. I just think that he's not going to be expensive running back to draft. Like, I don't see drafters pushing his ADP up into round 2 or round 3 when you look at just his entire situation. It's like, well, I mean, it's really hard to beat where he's at in this spot in Houston. So I think Joe Mixon's a massive winner.
Erickson, how did people on Twitter respond to your TikTok that you posted there, where you also highlighted that I called Mixon washed?
It was split. The first comment was like, watch the Bengals all last year. He's definitely washed. And then someone said, actually, I thought he played a lot better than he did the year before. So it's split. The community is split on Joe Mixon as a very divisive running back, both on and off the field. But just for on-field production, man, like, I'm super pumped and giddy about him with the Texans.
DBro, where do you think you'll have Mixon ranked?
So I've since come around on Mixon. I think that them signing him to the contract says all we need to know about his role and everything with that. So I made this mistake last year, and Erickson, I talked about this player back and forth, and with Rashad White. And were any of the efficiency metrics good last year going into last year? No. The pass gain stuff was about the only thing you could cling to and say Rashad White has efficiency. And the same thing happened for 2023. And did it matter? It did not. He was an RB1 in fantasy. The tackle breaking stuff did not matter. He kept rolling up touchdowns. He kept rolling up opportunity. And I think Joe Mixon's going to do the same freaking thing. And to Erickson's point about the offensive line, so when I went back and looked at Dameon Pierce's last season, when he was the starter for the team weeks 1 through 8, Houston was 32nd in adjusted yards before contact per attempt. Now, you look at what their offensive line and the growth that they showed last year when they all got healthy and played well, weeks 9 through 18, they were 12th. 12th. So Joe Mixon is getting a big upgrade as far as blocking. The role is going to be his. The contract says that, and I mean, we should have projected that anyway. I've moved Joe Mixon up. He's my RB13 right now. I mean, he's just going to get all the freaking volume. Houston's going to field a good offense. I mean, there's really... outside of the tackle breaking metrics, that's the only thing that you can point to as a hole in his game. But kind of like Rashad White taught us last year, sometimes it just doesn't freaking matter.
DBro, let's stick with you for your final free agency winner.
I've been waiting to uncork this, man, like a fine bottle of champagne. But here we are, baby. We've dealt through 2 years of pain. The pain train has been going down the tracks. It backed up and ran over us again in 2023. But I'm here to tell you, it's all good times. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here, guys, because we're only going to mention 3 guys on each one of these lists that we're talking about. Drake London and Kyle Pitts, we're lumping them together. Biggest winners of free agency, man. And this all comes down to just the big upgrade in quarterback play. And I know the first thing that people are going to tell me is, oh, well, Kirk Cousins in the Achilles. He's not a running back. He's not a wide receiver. He's not a tight end. He's not even a mobile quarterback. I don't care about the freaking Achilles, okay? His arm is just fine. You could talk about his base. You could talk about all those parts and pieces. I think he's going to be fine. So I'm not worried about the Achilles. But you're talking about the massive upgrade from the quarterback play that Drake London and Kyle Pitts dealt with last year to Kirk Cousins. It cannot be overstated here. Last year, Atlanta as a collective group. So you're talking about Ritter and Heineke, lump it all together. They were 27th in CPOE, they were 29th in adjusted completion rate, and 28th in highly accurate throw rate. That should tell you all you need to know. It is horrible.
Yeah.
Both of these guys dealt with terrible quarterback play. Kirk Cousins, when he was healthy last year, was top 12 in every single one of those metrics. Drake London proved to us in his rookie season he is a dude. 4th in target share, 4th in targets per route run, 5th in yards per route run. All of the metrics sagged last year because the quarterback play got even worse. Kyle Pitts, the same ceiling that we have always wanted for Kyle Pitts is firmly still there. Last year, he was still 13th in target share. He was first amongst all tight ends in deep targets, but sadly, he was tasked with two quarterbacks that cannot throw deep to save their lives. Kyle Pitts also was only 34th in red zone targets. He got 5 red zone targets the entire year, guys. How's he supposed to produce with that? When you look at the deeper efficiency metrics for Kyle Pitts, the efficiency metrics scream that he still has that sky-high ceiling we've always wanted. And I always go back to yards per route run versus man coverage, because if you look at that metric for tight ends, it tells you, it just lists off the laundry list of elite guys. Last year, Kyle Pitts, even though all the rest of his counting stats were down, amongst 41 qualifying tight ends, he was still 7th in yards per route run versus man coverage, immediately behind Travis Kelce and immediately ahead of Mark Andrews. Pitts has tight end 1 overall upside, and Drake London is my wide receiver 9. This passing offense is going up, and I'm buying in big time.
If you had to pick one, who are you more in on?
I'm more in on Drake London than I am Kyle Pitts, only because I think you can get some other guys that I like at tight end, but I think Drake London's, I've said it on previous shows, I'll say it again here, he's going to catch 95 to 100 balls this year. It's coming.
Yeah, I enjoyed that when I guess there was discussion. I assume this was real and not a fake story, but when there was discussion of giving up the number 8 to Kirk Cousins. Kyle Pitts just said, "Just give me more targets, man." Like he didn't need cash or anything, which is a fun one.
And if you're Kyle Pitts, do you just say to Kirk, you're like, "Look, just keep the number. It's fine. But I would like at least 8 targets a game." Okay,
exactly.
Can we agree on that?
Exactly,
cool?
the number 8. Yes. Quick rundown of our free agency winners: Chase Brown, Saquon Barkley, Christian Kirk, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, and Drake London / Kyle Pitts. If you need new tires for your car, Discount Tire is your go-to. They have exceptional service, and you get a 30% shorter average wait time when you buy and book online at DiscountTire.com. They have this really cool feature called Treadwell, which is an online tire buying guide that gives you transparency on tire performance, as well as personalized recommendations based on your location and driving habits. Discount Tire is also the largest independent tire retailer in the country, so it has the biggest selection of tires and wheels. And here's a pro tip from the experts at Discount Tire: you can prevent wear and boost gas mileage by keeping your tires properly inflated. Tire pressure supports the weight of your vehicle and is important to check for safety. So if it's been over a month since you last checked your tire pressure, stop by one of their local stores for a free tire safety and air pressure check. Discount Tire, let's get you taken care of. You might have noticed I did not toss to Erickson for the London and Pitts conversation. That's because the first free agency loser Erickson is talking about is on the other side of that. It's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, it's Kirk Cousins, because I think that he's going to be overvalued. I think that we're kind of just like bucketing him into, oh, he's a winner too, right? He got the bag. Kirk Cousins, there we go. And it's like, no. Like, I think this is a worse situation for him overall. And when I look at quarterbacks that bust in fantasy football, Kirk Cousins basically checks off every single box of what you look for in a potential stay away quarterback. So what are those 4 factors? Looking at injuries, looking at touchdown regression, looking at a new situation, and looking at a lack of rushing upside. He checks off all the boxes, all the bad boxes that you don't want to draft in quarterback. So for me, look, I don't want to dive into the injury, the Achilles, etc. But the thing that I want to point out is at a team level, the Falcons are going to be more injured on offense than they were last year, because they were the healthiest offense in the NFL last year. So I'm not a doctor, but I'm a doctor of regression. And the regression suggests the Falcons aren't going to be as lucky when it comes to injury luck in 2024. And the fact that they signed a 36-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles, I mean, you don't need to squint to see how this could potentially go wrong for this offense. So, and the fact that I don't think enough people are going to consider the injury in any way, shape, or form. Like, I'm going to pay attention to it. And I'm not falling for what happened last year with Tony Pollard, where there was an injury and the majority of us just kind of ignored it. Like, if the majority is going to ignore the Kirk Cousins Achilles injury, whether they're right or wrong, I want to be the one that takes it more seriously. So that's for one thing that I'm concerned about when it comes to Cousins. Again, talked about the rushing upside. He doesn't have that. And touchdowns. Look, he led the NFL in passing touchdowns before his injury last year. That's why his numbers look so good. And yet he was still under 20 points per game when it came to his fantasy production. If you're not scoring over 20 points per game, you can find QB production elsewhere. Like, why would I draft Kirk Cousins rounds ahead when I can just get Matthew Stafford or Jared Goff? Like, guys that are probably going to put up basically the same exact type of numbers, but you're going to get them way cheaper because they're not the sexy new toy that, oh, I got to have Kirk Cousins. I got to stack Kirk Cousins with my Atlanta Falcons guys. Like, that's what's going to drive his price up. So I have more reservations about this offense in general because I don't see the advantage of just chasing the steam with it necessarily. And I find that, well, if the Falcons offense doesn't live up to expectations, then I win. If I'm lower than consensus on the majority of their pieces, like that's all that has to really happen for me. Whereas if I just chase the steam with everybody else, okay, well then it's a net neutral. Like it's not, I'm not gaining anything by just following everyone else in the Falcons. So I'm lower on Kirk Cousins as a result. I think Kirk Cousins is the easiest way to fade the offense. And for me, the way I would buy into it would be just to draft Bijan. Because I think that a running back is most agnostic of the quarterback play specifically versus the receivers and tight ends, where obviously we've seen that play out the last couple of years in Atlanta.
DBro, when Erickson said, "I'm not a doctor," did you also expect him to say, "But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night"? Or was
I
that
was
just
waiting
me?
for that. I was waiting for that. But so 2 parts. I was surprised we didn't get the Holiday Inn reference. And 2, I didn't know Andrew Anderson was going to make a appearance on the show today. Like that's what I feel like. This is Anderson coming out from the under the rock and saying, "Well, there's no props, but we're taking the unders and all these Falcon players." And I get it, man. Like I understand that part of it because Erickson and I agree with this. Kirk Cousins is in a long tier of pocket passers, and where you want to put him there. Where do you have Kirk ranked right now, Erickson?
I think I have him. Well, the thing is funny because my initial reaction was to move him up. Like that was my gut reaction. I was like, wait a minute, like why am I moving this guy up? Like this doesn't make. So I have him at QB 20. So he's behind Stafford and Goff for me, and then behind Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, like the rookie quarterbacks I'm excited about. So.
And I don't have a problem with that. I think you can make a conversation or at least an argument for Kirk anywhere from QB 13 to QB 20. I mean, I have a long. That is literally my.
He's
tier
definitely
going
to go. He's going to be
guys.
drafted closer to QB 13 than QB 20. Like.
Yeah, and that's fine. I have no problem fading him because, again, if you want exposure to this offense, you can get it from any of these big three guys, as well as some of the tertiary options if you want to bet or you want to fade at this offense. So I have no problems with that.
DBro, let's stick with you for your number 3 free agency loser.
Oh, man, I'm going to go with Austin Eckler here. I look, if Anthony Lynn wasn't in Washington, he wouldn't have gotten the contract that he got, but you're looking at a guy that the fall from grace came quickly. I mean, we're talking about a running back that this time last year we were talking about, okay, he's going to still be an RB1. He wasn't anywhere close to that. You could say, okay, well, it has to be because of the ankle sprain he sustained in week 1, and he just never got fully healthy. That can be true. The other part of that can also be true is that he's an older running back, and when the juice goes, it goes, man. So you're looking at last year, even when he came back from the injury, he was the RB28 in fantasy. He was averaging 16 touches per game, but he was literally just getting everything that was blocked and nothing more. I mean, does anybody need to go to X to pull up any of the runs from Austin Eckler last year where you saw him motoring down the field and he looked closer to being a fullback than a electric running back that we had come to love in the last few years? And look, I'm happy for Eckler that he got another contract and he's still in the NFL. I love the player, love the guy. But talking about where he is in his NFL career, this is a big loss because he's going from being the guy, an RB1 in fantasy, to he's probably playing second fiddle to Brian Robinson this year. And that might sound harsh to people, but what out of Austin Eckler's year last year gives you confidence he's going to bounce back? Amongst 49 qualifying running backs, he's 38th in yards to contact per attempt, 46th in missed tackles forced per attempt. None of those numbers are good. As well as if you look at what this offense is possibly going to look like this year, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Thor and I talked about Jaden Daniels going to Washington in freaking February. And now the betting markets have all come around and now he's the betting favorite. He always should have been the betting favorite. But with Jaden Daniels there's not going to be a plethora of checkdowns. You're going to have probably a efficient rushing offense. Here you go, Brian Robinson, who probably is also the favorite to get the red zone and the goal line work over Austin Eckler because none of these coaches and have ties to him. Heck, Dan Quinn's already come out in the media and talked up Brian Robinson when he didn't even have to mention him. So we know that the coaching staff also loves Brian Robinson. And if you look at how the offense is going to play out, if they have a rushing quarterback, all of that stuff's not going to be there. So Austin Eckler is a huge loser right now.
Erickson, what do you think? I mean, I was kind of, very low on Eckler already, even prior to seeing whatever the landing spot was. And this one doesn't help. Like DBro mentioned, you think about making the case of a rookie quarterback dumping the ball off a lot, but if they really do go at Daniels, then he's not the type of guy to do that. So, I mean, what do you make of Eckler right now, Erickson?
I mean, I'd rather draft Brian Robinson. For me, Eckler he's got the name cachet, right? That's gonna inflate his ADP. Where Brian Robinson was actually really productive last year at times. So, look, Brian Robinson was able to keep Antonio Gibson on the bench. Who has more juice right now in their career, Antonio Gibson or Austin Eckler? Gibson does. Gibson has more juice. I'm sorry. He's a younger player. Yep. So, the fact that Brian Robinson was still splitting work with Antonio Gibson last year, was still able to be productive. Yes, the receiving role's probably not going to be there for him. He's not going to rip off these 80-yard touchdowns randomly left and right. So, but you're going to pay an RB3 price tag for Brian Robinson. He's going to be free. And if this offense can take off or go from basically stone cold worse, which is where they're all going to be drafted with the rookie quarterback, if Jaden Daniels or whoever rookie quarterback they draft can get this offense up to average, Brian Robinson could score double-digit touchdowns because that's how Anthony Lynn used this offense between the running backs. Remember with the Chargers, it was Melvin Gordon scored all the touchdowns. It wasn't until they got rid of Anthony Lynn that Austin Eckler finally got that goal line roll. So I think if Brian Robinson is going to be scoring the touchdowns, Eckler is going to get a lot of, meaningless touches that really aren't going to help move the needle in fantasy. So I'd rather have Brian Robinson. He's probably going to be cheaper.
Brian Robinson this year will be the newest version of Washington of Alfred Morris. I'm calling it now.
If you guys are
and
anything...
that's a good thing, by the way, okay?
Alfred Morris in his heyday had some really fun seasons as a late run guy in that Shanahan offense. If you guys are anything like me, you have had plenty of terrible experiences buying tickets. I've been to so many games over the years where the ticket buying experience was so bad, I almost just didn't bother going to the game. Hidden fees that raise prices by obscene amounts, not to mention when you can't even tell if you can trust the seller or how good the views are from the seats. And of course, there are never any available deals to make it all a little more affordable. Thankfully, Game Time is here to solve those problems. You shouldn't have to worry when buying tickets, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of the ticket buying process. I was on the app earlier this morning. It really stood out just how easy it is to navigate. The ticket buying experience is smooth. It's immediately clear which tickets are the cheapest, where exactly those seats are, and at the top of the screen, I can see flash deals to make sure I'm getting the best absolute price. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And it's so simple, you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Erickson, give me your number 2 free agency loser.
I'm going to go with Aaron Jones because I didn't want to draft him when he was in his last legs in Green Bay, and I don't want to draft him even if he's looks like the bell cow for Minnesota. Look, he got a 1-year contract worth $7 million. That was the exact same contract that Dalvin Cook got last year from the Jets. Yeah, Dalvin Cook, the guy that is no longer talked about in fantasy football whatsoever. So, I mean, Aaron Jones is going to be 30 years old in December. He's coming off his worst year in terms of rushing yards over expectation in his last 4 seasons. Look, it's going to be a rookie quarterback or Sam Darnold or whatever in Minnesota, and I'm just concerned about, okay, this guy, his entire career has won with efficiency. Eventually, the efficiency is going to fall off. And would anyone be surprised that, he turned 30 years old, he played in a new offense with a bunch of inexperienced quarterbacks, and his efficiency got nuked? Like, that's what I'm expecting from Aaron Jones. So, again, I think that he's going to be slated up because of quote-unquote volume, but the low commitment to Jones, for me, from the team is like, well, if he isn't firing, like, we have Ty Chandler. Like, he was explosive. We could draft another running back. Like, I just think that he's not safe whatsoever. And I know he's been viewed in that light because of how efficient he's been able to be as a pass catcher, et cetera, but too many concerns with me about him in this Vikings offense that we don't really know what's going to look. Are the Vikings kind of like rebuilding, looking ahead to 2025, 2026? Just too many red flags for me to be excited about Aaron Jones, even if he projects well on paper.
DBro, Aaron Jones is RB20 in ECR. Is that too high, too low, or just right?
So I look at this the opposite way from Erickson. Like I get the age concerns, but when Aaron Jones came back and he was finally fully healthy, he was still money. And I understand that. I understand the health worries, and I get betting on older running backs. I think he still has the juice. I think it's too low because I think he still has the juice, and if he can stay healthy, I know those are big ifs, that I think he's going to put up really good numbers for the Vikings because Ty Chandler is definitely not.
Well, I mean,
but I understand.
I mean, it's easy to look good when you're playing all defenses that have had to play the entire season versus you, who has been on injured reserve the entire season. And AJ Dillon was also hurt at the end of the season too. So,
well, it's also kind of hard to look good if you're washed, like you're saying he is. But you know,
I mean, it's good. It's easy to look washed when you're facing defenses that are tired. You got fresh legs.
DBro, who's your number 2 free agency loser?
I do not understand the contract that Chicago gave DeAndre Swift. It makes no freaking sense to me. Like, so my next big loser here is Khalil Herbert. He's the Rodney Dangerfield of running backs, man. Like, he doesn't get enough respect. He was top 12 on multiple efficiency metrics last year. Did that matter, Chicago? No. I think they could have got similar production out of a tandem of Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert as they're going to get out of DeAndre Swift, handing him a 3-year deal, which really is more of a 2-year deal with all the money they gave him. It makes no sense to me. All you're doing is paying the newest version of Miles Sanders that is a little bit better at catching passes, and that's it. Because DeAndre Swift, for all the stands out there and say he's so awesome, last year you're talking about a running back that was 40th in yards after contact per attempt. He was 30th in missed tackles forced per attempt. What are you really glomming on to outside of name value from yesteryear to say Swift is so good? He's no better than Khalil Herbert, and actually I think it's probably a downgrade for the rushing efficiency. And Khalil Herbert, unfortunately, makes this loser list because he's getting pushed down the depth chart. He's not going to get the volume that he should, and every time they've given him chances, he's produced. So sadly, Khalil Herbert's a loser right now.
Now, Erickson, your final loser is the other guy in this. Well, one of the other guys in this backfield.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert will be a winner once he gets traded to the Dallas Cowboys. So, we will live again.
Sign me up.
We will live again for Khalil Herbert because I think that the Swift signing is an indication that Herbert is basically nuked in Chicago. He has no ties to that current regime because he was drafted by the previous regime. But my number one loser is DeAndre Swift. I was kind of lukewarm on the initial landing spot. Again, it's hard to call him like a dead or a stone cold dead loser because it's like he's a starting running back. Like he wasn't guaranteed to be a starting running back anywhere. But for me, it's like, okay, where is he going to win in the Chicago offense? So now they've added Keenan Allen. Okay, like how many targets is he going to have out of the backfield? Like probably not that many. We already talked about how his rushing on a per touch basis last year wasn't necessarily great. And then going back to the touchdowns, it's been multiple teams, not just the Lions, but also the Eagles last year. They're like, we don't want to use DeAndre Swift near the goal line. We want to use somebody else. And who could that somebody else be? Maybe the 220-pound Roschon Johnson, who the Bears are in love with, I'm convinced, and I'm convinced he would have had a bigger role last year had he not suffered the concussion. So I couldn't list Roschon Johnson as a quote-unquote winner because he would only be a winner if he was like the clear-cut starter in this offense. But I'd be lying if I wasn't going to say I'm more interested in drafting Roschon Johnson now because his ADP is going to dip, and it would not shock me whatsoever if he's the goal line back. Why can't Roschon Johnson be the goal line back? Again, I mentioned it earlier in the show, but DeAndre Swift's teammates the last 2 years, Jalen Hurts and Jamal Williams, 16 touchdowns per season. They're teammates of DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is fueling other guys on his team to score rushing touchdowns because he's so bad at it. So Roschon Johnson for me is a winner in that DeAndre Swift becomes a loser because I think that on paper it's like, okay, like he'll get the touches, but I think he's going to get touches in between the 20s and not catch that many passes and be like, wait, I drafted DeAndre Swift as an RB2 and like he doesn't even score as many points on in his own backfield. So I have major concerns about Swift. And it's like the last thing I want to point out is we talked about this when you're going from team to team, what does that tell you about how those teams view you? Like, do teams love DeAndre Swift? I don't think so. I'm not convinced. Like, I've never met the guy, so I don't know. But I just think it's kind of peculiar that teams seem to always sour on DeAndre Swift and never really value him as like this uber talented guy from Georgia that he was kind of boasted up to be. Whereas Roschon Johnson, oh my God, like the Bears could not stop talking how much they love this guy when they drafted him as a 4th round pick. So he does all the right things. I'm not so sure that DeAndre Swift does. So for me, Roschon Johnson would not be surprised if we're looking up and be like, well, he's the RB1 of the Bears backfield.
DBro, what are your quick thoughts on Roschon?
First, Worm, I need us to get this clip for social. Can we get a clip that Erickson said Roschon's going to score 16 touchdowns this year? Because that's all I heard with the correlations. But I think Roschon Johnson is a fine late round guy. I think that, look, if Herbert gets moved, if Herbert stays, then I'm all in on Herbert. I will be drafting him everywhere because I don't believe in Swift. I believe Herbert has the talent. And up until last year, DeAndre Swift was also a guy that we were like, can he stay healthy? Just because in a 1-year deal, a prove-it deal, that he managed to stay healthy, and also Philly kind of really backed off the gas down the stretch and said, no, we're going to give more touches to freaking Kenny Gainwell, then there's just a lot of risk for DeAndre Swift. As well as we haven't even talked about the fact of what Eberflus and this offense did last year. It was a revolving door of running backs. And look, I don't think they should have given the contract to DeAndre Swift to begin with, but we also cannot dismiss them using these other running backs if they all stay on the roster more than anybody wants to see if you're drafting DeAndre Swift.
DBro, let's wrap up with your number one loser.
This is the guy that people probably stayed to listen to and they know was going to be on this list. And unfortunately, RIP Tajay Spears RB1 season. It was so short-lived. And I look, I'm lamenting it as well as everybody else. I'm crying about it because Tajay Spears is that guy. He crushed last year. I mean, basically, if you look at efficiency metrics, he was the discount Devon Achane. Like, it is what it is. He was breaking tackles, creating explosive plays. I think looking at what Tennessee did, it was very telling. And if we go back and remember all the pre-draft process and Tajay Spears and the knee being a concern and stuff like that, Tajay Spears is still going to have a role in this backfield. I think that this backfield dissolves into being a disgusting committee, and that's probably not, shattering anybody's expectations. But looking at this, I think that Tennessee is going to have a really good rushing offense this year if they can get the offensive line right, because both of these rushers, and Tony Pollard has shown in his career, he has had that type of efficiency. If he can get back to that, both of these guys could split this backfield and each get 175 touches, and Tennessee be a really good rushing offense because of it. But RB1 season for Tajay Spears, it's gone. It's gone as fast as we hoped it would get here. It's already gone, man. So he's the biggest loser free agency.
Yeah, that really did come and go very quickly. Erickson, what are your thoughts on Spears given the Pollard signing?
I mean, it's like they have two running backs that do the same thing. And it's like every week it's going to be like, oh, well, Spears got 51% of the snaps versus Pollard 49%. Like he's taking over. And then the next week it's like, I can already see myself doing like the usage fantasy forecast for these running backs every single week and be like, guys, like, what do you want me to tell you? Like every week it's something different. And playing in the Titans offense that, I mean, I don't think we should be overly bullish on of this being this juggernaut where, one of the things you can find with bust running backs is real life RB2s on bad offenses. They don't hit. And one of these guys is going to be an RB2 on this offense. So unfortunately, just looking at the optics of the move, they had Spears already and they elected to go get Tony Pollard. I think Spears is the biggest loser, like DBro said.
If you've got any dynasty drafts on the horizon or want to see how the latest free agency moves affect fantasy football drafts, our mock draft simulator tool is now open at fantasypros.com/simulator. It's a fast and free way to practice for any kind of draft, including dynasty startup drafts, rookie drafts. That's what's common this time of year. Again, that's at fantasypros.com/simulator. Guys, we went a little long, but a lot of good stuff. Obviously, we had a lot of news to get to at the top. We will get out of there on that. For DBro and Erickson battling through surgery, I am Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.